Let's take you back now, down to Cape Town, which is being blessed, as I said earlier, Thulas, in the light that I think can only be compared to the kind of light that Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu spread around the country and around the world. It's the view of Table Mountain behind you, Thulas, as I come to you, almost forming the bookends, really, of St. George's Cathedral, and perhaps the bookends of the Arch himself. Morning, Thulasizwe, Simelane.
Gareth, the sun is starting to, bring in that warming glow to the city of Cape Town as we inch ever closer to the start of the day, really, in as far as the lying in state at the St. George's Cathedral of the Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who passed on the 26th of December. This is a man, of course, Gareth, who wanted us, who was almost very specific about how he wanted to be remembered and how he wanted us to have his send-off, saying that he wanted to be remembered with the words, he laughed, he loved, he cried. He was very specific about that. I've seen different iterations of that expression, but it was in that order. He laughed, he loved, he cried. You're looking at the visuals from St. George's Cathedral, and you will see that on the left, the South African flag is flying at half-mast. It is in line, of course, with the directives and the policy directives of an official funeral category 1, which he has been afforded, as the Arch, by President Cyril Ramaphosa, making that declaration that it will be an official funeral category 1. This is the category of funeral that is usually reserved for such serving officials in our democratic institutions as the National Assembly, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, as well as premiers and the Chief Justice, being people who fall into that category as and when they do pass on. That's the category of funeral that is reserved for those people. It really speaks to the stature of the Archbishop, the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who has been a part of our life for so many, many years, for decades, really, and now we get the opportunity to send him off. And it seems to me, Gareth, that, the Archbishop, someone who was present for many of our own periods of mourning as South Africans at various stages over the decades, it seems that in that he must have authored what the comfort should be for us when he passes on. He attended many, many funerals, spoke at many, many funerals. Who can forget him speaking at the memorial service and funeral service of the late Chris Hani, in 1993. He spoke at the funeral of Steve Biko in the 70s in 1977. But many, many other funerals he would speak with the Arch. But it seems in all of that and in the way that he lived his life and in the way that he spoke out about what exactly he wanted to play out when he has passed on, that definitely seems to me that to be a message that was about comforting us posthumously when he is gone. We sort of got a sense of his spirit comforting us, certainly in the memorial service that played itself out at City Hall here in Cape Town, which is behind me here at the Grand Parade. The music was carefully curated. There were specific messages that were meant to be there. Come with me down Paradise Road, as Zolani Mahola sang there beautifully for us. We also had the messages about we must heal our land, as well as the messages of the speakers there, Mampela Rampele speaking beautifully, as well as Cheryl Carolas being the main speakers. Let me take you to eNCA's Ayesha Ismael, who is outside St. George's Cathedral. Ayesha, we're building up to the day one of lying in state of Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu. This is a day, of course, that has been added. It was originally meant to be just one day of the Arch lying in state, which was meant to be tomorrow on Friday, ahead of the funeral on Saturday. This was added because there was that demand, wasn't there, for many, many people who wanted to have that moment of closure, just being able to walk past the coffin and say their goodbyes to the Arch.
That is correct, Thulas, and based on the outpouring of love and all the messages that came in to the family and as well as to the church, a decision was made to add this extra day. But now we also know that, remember earlier we said that the funeral cortege will arrive between 7 and 7:30. We've now heard that it's likely to be between 8 and 8:30, and instead of the church receiving the arch, it will be the family that will arrive here to receive the body of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. But Thulas, I'm now joined by the Reverend Vilma Jacobson. Now you will recall that Reverend Jacobson was the first woman that Archbishop Desmond Tutu ordained right here in St. George's Cathedral.
That's right.
Reverend, this must be quite a sad moment for you, a sad time for you, given your interesting journey with Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
Good morning. Yes, it is a sad day, but also a both and, right? So last night at the interfaith service in City Hall, I felt the tears, a bit teary, because you see people that knew him in the same way or a similar way. So yes, one is sad, maybe underneath it, but his spirit and his words and his voice are everywhere. So we are surrounded by him, if you like. So I'm also grateful. I'm just hugely grateful for all that he has meant in my life, and because of him, my life is what it was, right? And to have been ordained in this beautiful cathedral with him both times is such a huge moment in my life. There aren't always words to capture it. But yes, it's a big day. It's a big, and it's not just sad. It's many different emotions. But sadness is there, yes.
But of course, the Archbishop wouldn't want us to be sad.
No, he would want us to celebrate. We call this the celebration of life. So I am celebrating his incredible life and how he touched people and individuals and nations and everyone and everything between in our world. What an amazing privilege to know this man and to have been touched by him.
Now, the last time we saw each other and the last time we saw Archbishop Desmond Tutu inside the cathedral was on the 8th of October when we all came here to celebrate his 90th birthday. Did you have an opportunity to go over and interact with him?
Oh, just tiny. It was the 7th of October is his birthday. And I was also seated in the cathedral, and right at the end when he was leaving and he was in a wheelchair, and I was standing up also getting ready to leave. It was like we just saw each other, and his eyes lit up and he smiled and he reached out his hand, and I reached out his hand and clasped his hand, and I was overwhelmed with joy just to see him. I wasn't even sure I would see him that day, with so many people there. So yes, I felt like in some ways that was a goodbye, yes.
So we know now that a second day has been added to the lying-in state to allow the public to come and view the body. What can we expect to happen here today?
So at the beginning, once the family have received the coffin and received, and it will move all the way to the top end, to where the high altar is at the other end of the cathedral, and that's where the coffin will be. And then at 9 o'clock, we're organizing a very respectful flow of people that will come in through the door on Wales Street, and then they will file in, go through the chapel, and they will just get a brief moment to stand and stop and pay respects, and then they will be gently moved down the other aisle and then out the door at the bell tower. So we are asking and hoping to provide a very respectful, quiet space for people just to stop and say thank you, Tata, or whatever it is they want to say in their hearts. Yes.
And then, of course, at the end of the day, the body goes back to the funeral parlor, and then the same process will happen tomorrow.
Same thing will happen tomorrow morning, yes. So we have 2 days for people to be able to come and do this, yes.
Reverend Vilma Jacobson, thank you so much for your time. Thulas, now we know that the funeral will start at 10 o'clock on Saturday, and there has been an appeal by Archbishop Thabo appealing to people not to come to the cathedral, not to board buses and taxis to come to the funeral on Saturday, because the cathedral can only accommodate 100 people. But of course, the funeral service will be broadcast live on our channel. It will also be live streamed, so people can also sit at home and watch the funeral service of Archbishop Desmond Tutu starting at 10 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah, without a doubt, Ayesha, it will be streamed live on many, many platforms, including here on eNCA. We will be carrying it live, that funeral that's on Saturday. But there's still a lot more to happen before we even get there. I like what Reverend Jacobson said to you just now about how the Arch would not want us to be sad. It is a sad occasion, but if you remember carefully what Archbishop Desmond Tutu was all about, those words that I keep referring to, he laughed, he loved, he cried. He certainly would want to deeply reflect about this moment, but would not want us to be sad. And I suppose that's really part of the spirit with which people will be coming through to file past and sort of view his body and say their last goodbyes as his body will be lying in state. Just give me a sense then of the build-up, Ayesha, to that moment. The key streets there are, down Herzog Boulevard into Adelaide Street. Just give me a sense leading up to that process that the Reverend was describing to you in the last few minutes.
So, as you correctly point out, Thulas, the funeral cortege will come down Herzog Boulevard into Adelaide Street and then turn into Wales Street, where the cathedral is situated. And it is right here, I'm standing right down here at the steps, where the family of Archbishop Desmond Tutu will be waiting to receive his body. And as I said initially, the body was meant to arrive between 7 and 7:30. That has now changed, and it's likely to arrive between 8 and 8:30. Now, some of the streets leading to the cathedral have already been closed. We've seen the traffic officers, we've seen police officers, and of course we see the City of Cape Town officials in full force, because they say they also want this to run as smoothly as possible. And just also to note that the condolence books are still available to be signed outside the cathedral. And of course the viewing today and tomorrow will be a public viewing, so people can come between 9 and 5 today and tomorrow to come and view the body of Archbishop Desmond Tutu right here in St. George's Cathedral.
Yeah, and that process is a deeply a solemn process, that process of, viewing a body of a person who has passed on lying in state. I must confess that for me personally, it's not a practice that I ordinarily would want to do, but on those few occasions when I did, I absolutely understood why people think it is an important thing to do. It sort of gives you that moment of closure, to be able to, take in one last moment and say your goodbyes properly. People sometimes tend to bow for a moment or say a prayer as they file past the casket of the person who will have passed on, and I can only imagine the scenes that we are likely to witness there. Ayesha, let's reflect a little bit on last night, right? From outside our studio here at the Grand Parade, just outside City Hall, I could see you moving, Ayesha, Ismael. I could see you moving as the music was playing back. Just take me back to those moments, because it was musical, but at the same time the messages were quite powerful. Much of it was scripted almost to perfection by the Arch himself, expressing his wishes of what he wants to see happening after he has passed on. And that's really the story that he planned, and he spoke out and spoke up about what it is that he would want to see once he has passed on, didn't he?
Well, Thulas, the fact that I remembered all the words to the songs that were sung last night is an indication of my age, I guess, because I did see some of my colleagues staring at me and wondering, how does she know the words? These are such old songs. But be that as it may, yes, the songs were carefully chosen. These were the songs and the artists that the Arch loved, and we saw the legendary Jonathan Butler playing Heal Our Land. We also heard Come With Me Down Paradise Queens Road. And then, of course, there was Vicky Sampson, who was also performing last night. So, again, at that interfaith service, we heard from all the major faiths paying tribute to Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And you were there and you heard speaker after speaker just singing the praises of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and then of course the song and dance that followed after, and it just kind of was an indication of who this person was. He was so well loved, he was so respected, and last night was really a fitting tribute to somebody of Archbishop Desmond Tutu's stature.
Yeah, and who can forget Art Matthews singing what he means: faith, love, hope, more tolerance. You know, that's saying that in the same name of God that would die for and take innocent lives for. That's not what he means, and it doesn't matter what book you read. Art Williams singing that song by Just Ginger last night. That was part of the beautiful kaleidoscope that we witnessed last night in memory of the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu. We will come back to you a bit later on, Ayesha, Ismael, and I do hope that we'll be able to see the processes as they get underway outside St. George's Cathedral. Of course, part of the mourning period is about also showing our humanity. It's one of our most vulnerable moments, really, when we are grieving as people in our ordinary private spaces, but also when we are grieving for a public figure. Let me share with you what the Archbishop said in line with that spirit of humanity and Ubuntu. This was at a ceremony, a sermon in 2005. He was preaching in Dublin, in Ireland, at St. George and St. Thomas Church. Quote, he says, "A completely solitary human being is a contradiction in terms. We are made for interdependence. That is the fundamental law of our being." And South Africa, we are witnessing this moment together, interdependent in our humanity, and remembering the man who taught us so much about Ubuntu, the Archbishop Desmond Tutu. This is eNCA. We are live to you from Cape Town, from the Grand Parade. Our coverage continues as we build up to day one of Archbishop Desmond Tutu's body lying in state at St. George's Cathedral here in Cape Town. I'm back with more for you in just a moment. Stay with us.